spread all over the world. And we know, all of us know what is meant by flowering plants, because all of us knew the flower and most of us like it and wish to have it in their homes every day. So the seeds of flowering plants develop with a pericarp. The pericarp here, it is a cover. Therefore, the flowering plant are called angiosperm. The angiosperm are common in various habitats. They may be small herbs and giant trees. The flower is the reproductive organ of the flowering plant. So the flower, it is very important because it is the organ of reproduction in this type of plants. So what is a flower? The flower, it is a short stem where the leaves are modified into floral part. The leaves are modified into floral parts. That means they are taking a certain or another form of shape in order to make a new function. So the flower, it is a short stem where its leaves are modified into floral part. The flower arises from the axil and of either a green or a scaly leaf called bracket. In some cases, flower occurs without a bracket. So the bracket, what is a bracket? A bracket, it is a small leaf which is found at the base of the flower. This leaf, flower arises from it. And this part from which the leaf arises, it is called axil. So the flower arises from the axil of either a green or a skull leaf called bracket. In some cases, flower occur without this bracket, but it arises from a certain small bud at this part. Flowers can be classified or divided by its number into two main types. The first one, solitary, that means unique, one flower, or inflorescence, that means a group of flowers. The solitary flower also are subdivided into two types. So the solitary flower, it is one flower and it has different types. So the first type of this solitary flower, it is called apical flower. So the solitary apical flower, that means this flower, it is found at the tip of the stem, as in the figure, such as the tulip, which stops the growth of the stem. So if the flower, it grows on the tip of the stem, so the stem, it will never grow after that. Or another type, the solitary axial, which comes out from the axial of the stem. This axial flower is such as the petunia. The second type, it is the inflorescence. The inflorescence is a group of flowers on the floral axis in different aggregation as in bean and mentor. This type of inflorescence, we found that the shape of this aggregation may differ from one type to another. Maybe they are very compact or they are widely spread from each other. They are away from each other a little bit. So the flower comes out from a leaf on the leaf axil called bracket. This bracket is green or skull that varies in shape and color from one type of plant to another. Another type of classification according to the presence of the stalk of the flower. If the flower has a stalk, so we are going to call it stalked flower. And it is this flower is carried on the stalk, which is called pedicle. So the stalked flower is carried on a pedicle. While there is another type of this flower which is called sessile flower. This sessile flower, it hasn't any pedicle. So the stem, there is no stalk at this type of flower. After knowing the types and the types of the flower, and we knew how they are classified, are going to study the structure of the flower. The structure of the flower here, it is called the typical structure. That means identical structure. That it may be found in most of all the flowers. So this type of typical flower has four floral holes. The first one is called calyx, the second corolla, the third androecium, and gynosium. Example for these types of typical flower, there is the bean flower, apple flower, onion, and petunia flower. All of these types of flower contains all of these holes, which are the calyx, corolla, androecium, and gynosium. Let's study each part in details. First, the calyx. The calyx, it is the outermost hole of the flower. It is formed of green leaves known as sepals. So the calyx here, it is the outer one, the green leaves, as you see in the picture. So these leaves are called, each one of it is called sepal. Then what is the importance of this calyx? Why it is created in this part? It is created in this part to protect the inner parts of the flower against the draft, rains, and winds. The second hole after that, or the next one to the inner part, there is the corolla. The corolla here, it is the next hole inside the calyx. This next hole, it is composed of one row or many rows of colored leaves called petals. Each one is called petal. So another time, the corolla, it is the second hole inside the calyx. It is found inside it. And it is composed, sometimes in some types of flower, it is formed of one colored row, one row of colored leaflets. And sometimes in another types of flowers, they are many rows of it, and they are called, each leaf is called petal. Then what is the importance of this corolla? The corolla here, it plays a very important role in the life of this flower. The first one, it protects the inner part of the flower. That means it protects the second step, or the second part of this one, which are the sexual parts, the male and female organs inside it. The second part, or the second important, that play an important role in pollination. It helps the insect to, or attract the insect to carry out pollination in these flowers. So another time, if we said the corolla, it is the next hole inside the calyx, and it is composed of one or many rows of colored leaves called petal, and they are important because they play an important role in the protection of floral sexual part and attract the insect for helping in pollination of this one. Then there is a very important thing we noticed about these two holes. The calyx and the corolla, sometimes they are fused together, so we can't differentiate between them, as in tulip and onion. These types of leaf is called perianth. So once the leaves of the calyx and corolla are fused together and they are not differentiated from each other, so we are called them perianth one. They are called perianth. So the two first part of the flower, which are the calyx and corolla, they are called the protective part or the outer part. There is the reproductive part of this flower, which are the androecium and gynecium one. The androecium represent the male organs of the flower. So the androecium, it represents the male organs of the flower, which consist of a group of stamens. These stamens, each one of them is consisting of a filament and is carried on an anther. That contains, each anther contains four sacs. These sacs are called sacs of pollen grains. So another time, the androecium, it is the male organ of the flower, and it is consisting of a group of these organs. Each one of it is called stamens, and each stamen consists of a filament and carries an anther which contains four sacs of pollen grains. The second reproductive part of the reproductive part is called gynecium, which represents the female organ and is the central whole of the flower. So at the center of the flower we are going to find the gynecium, which is the female organ, and this gynecium, it is formed of one or more carpel. Each carpel consists of a swollen part at the base, which is called ovary, and is connected with a thin neck called style, and the style is ended by a base which is called stigma, which is sticky in general. So another time, the carpel is a swollen part at its base, which is called ovary. Then it is attached to a very long neck called style. This neck is ended by a disc, and it is sticky. So this sticky part, it is called stigma. The stigma here, where it receives the pollen grains. So the carpel is formed of three main parts: the ovary, the style, and the stigma. The ovary contains the ovule or the eggs. So the ovary contains the ovules. Then the carpel here. The carpel here may be one carpel or formed of one chamber, which is called locules. But sometimes it is formed of many carpels. These many carpels may be fused together, formed one locule, or maybe are separate. Each one of ovary is separated from the other and form many loculi, which is many chambers inside this ovary. So another time, the gynecium, it is the female organ, and it is found at the center of the flower. It consists of carpels. Each carpel is composed of an ovary and style and stigma. Inside the ovary we found the ovules. Then sometimes we can divide the flowers also according to the presence of gynecium and androecium. Some flowers have the male and female organs in the same flower. Others, they have only one organ of gynecium, for example, so we call them female flowers. Or they contains only the androecium, so we call them the male flowers. As in the dates, the palm tree, it contains some of them, they are male, and some of them are females. So the male's flower contains only the androecium, and the female flower contains only the gynosium. So this flower, as this is the structure of this flower. So what is the function or the importance of this structure? Why they are created like that? So the flower, it has 4 main functions. These functions are the formation of pollen grains and the formation of the ovule. The third, pollination and fertilization. The fourth function, formation of fruit and seeds. Another time, the formation of pollen grains, the formation of ovule, pollination and fertilization, formation of fruits and seeds. In these episodes, we are going to study only the first 2, which are the formation of pollen grains and the formation of ovules. First, the formation of pollen grains. By examining a TS or a longitudinal section in a mature anther of a large stamen as in lily plant. So the lily plant here, its stamens are very large, or they are very big. So we can see them and we can differentiate inside it the pollen grains. So this lily consists of 4 sacs of pollen grains. The pollen grains sac are full of spore mother cell. Pay attention. First of all, that these sacs contains spore mother cell. Each contains large nucleus, which is diploid 1, 2N chromosome. Each of these cells is divided mitotically, forming 4 haploid cells. So another time, each of these cells is divided meiotically, forming haploid cells. Another time, each of these cells is divided meiotically, forming 4 haploid cells, which contains N chromosome, called microspores. Very good. So these are called microspores. These microspores, the nucleus of microspores is divided mitotically at this moment into 2 nuclei. Pay attention that the mother cell divide by a meiotic division. While in the microspore, it is divided mitotic division, by a mitotic division. So this one, the spore mother cell, is divided meiotic division, while that of the microspore is divided mitotically into 2 nuclei. One of them is called the nucleus of the tube, or tube nucleus, and the other one is called generative nucleus. Pay attention here, it is very important part. We are going to repeat this part because it is very, very important. We will examine the stamen of a lily. Why? Because the lily, it has a large stamen, so we can see the structure inside it. By taking a transverse section in it, we are going to find that there is 4 sacs called 4 sacs of pollen grains. The pollen sacs here are full with mother cells, spore mother cells, which contains 2N chromosome, or they are diploid. Then this spore mother cell are divided by a meiotic division into 4 haploid cells. These 4 haploid cells are called microspores. The nucleus of the microspore is divided by a mitotic division into two nuclei. One of them is called tube nucleus, and the other one it is called generative nucleus. This is the first step for the pollen grain. Then the pollen grain, it is covered from the outside by a thick protective layer to protect it from the environment conditions. When the anther is mature, the wall in between this pollen sac, it is degenerated, and then it is released, the pollen grain are released from this pollen sac. This what we know from the formation of the pollen grains. The second formation of the ovule. Pay attention. We studied from a minute ago the first part, which is the formation of the pollen grains. Then we studied the second part, which is the formation of ovule. Pay attention because it is a very important part in this lesson. During the production of pollen grain in the anther, we found that during this formation there is another changes taking place inside the ovary. This changes is taking place for production or the production of ovule. The ovule starts as a swollen part connected to anterior wall of the ovary that contains a large spore mother cell. Pay attention, there is a spore mother cell in the pollen grains and the spore mother cells for the ovum. The spore mother cell here they are diploid, they contains 2 N chromosome. During the ovule growth, a funicle or an umbilical cord connect this ovule with the walls of the ovary. Why? To transport food materials to this ovule. So the ovule is connected to the wall of the ovary by a funicle or by an umbilical cord. And the importance of this umbilical cord is producing is transporting food material to the ovule. Then after that, during the ovule growth, 2 covers are formed around it, which is called integuments. So 2 integuments surround the ovule completely, but leaving a very small part with a very small hole. This hole is called micropyle. Another time, during the ovule growth, 2 integuments and they surround it completely except a small part which is called micropyle. This hole, it is very important because through it the fertilization takes place, or the ovule it is fertilized through this part. So during ovule growth, 2 integuments are formed surrounding the ovule completely, and the safe minute hole called micropyle, through which the fertilization takes place. The spore mother cell is divided meiotically, giving a row of 4 haploid cells. 3 of them degenerate and the 4th grow rapidly, forming embryo sac that is surrounded by a nutritive tissue called nucellus. The nucleus is divided then meiotically 3 times, giving 8 nuclei. 4 of them migrate to the pole of each pole of the embryo. One of them of these 4 migrates to the center, and so they are called 2 polar nuclei. Each one of the two groups take some of the cytoplasm surrounding it and form the form antipodal cells, and then the one which are near the micropyle, the central one is called the egg, and the two are called synergid cells. The ovule by such a way become ready for fertilization. And now, my dear students, we reached the final point of our program. I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.